When we talk about thinking beyond limits, the very first thing we have to confront is this. Most of the limits that hold us back aren't real. They're not written into the laws of nature. They're not physical barriers we can touch. They're psychological walls, illusions that have been built in our minds over years of conditioning. From the moment we're born, we're surrounded by messages about what's possible, what's realistic, what's too much. Parents, teachers, friends, society, they all mean well. But they hand us their fears like a family heirloom. And before we even realize it, we start building our lives inside boundaries we never questioned. Think about it. When you were a child, your imagination had no limits. You could be an astronaut before lunch and a superhero by dinner. But somewhere along the way, that expansive way of thinking gets narrowed. Someone told you to be realistic, and you believed them. Someone laughed at your dream, and you decided maybe it was foolish. Someone told you people like us don't do things like that. And that became a truth you carried without even examining it. And now, as adults, we often confuse those inherited beliefs with actual reality. We treat them like unchangeable facts when in truth, they're just stories we've repeated long enough to believe. Here's the deeper truth. The human mind is a master of adaptation. It's constantly shaping itself around what you accept as possible. If you accept smallness, it builds walls around you to keep you safe inside it. But if you challenge those beliefs, if you start questioning the narratives that limit you, the walls begin to crack. The power of breaking the illusion lies in awareness, the courage to pause and ask, who told me this was true, and is it really? Every major breakthrough in human history came from someone refusing to accept a so-called limit. The Wright brothers were told human flight was impossible until it wasn't. Roger Bannister was told no human could run a mile in under 4 minutes until he did, and then dozens did soon after. What changed? Human biology didn't change overnight. What changed was belief. Once the illusion was broken, the impossible became accessible. And the same is true for your life. The moment you stop treating limits as facts and start treating them as hypotheses to be tested, everything shifts. But here's the catch. The mind clings to what's familiar. It will resist change, even if that change leads to freedom. That's why breaking the illusion isn't a one-time decision, it's a practice. It means catching yourself when you say, I could never do that, and replacing it with, what if I could? It means recognizing that fear is not proof of impossibility. It's just your comfort zone trying to protect itself. And it means understanding that your past does not define your future unless you let it. One of the most liberating truths you can embrace is this: you are not your story. You are the storyteller. You have the power to rewrite the narrative, to decide that the beliefs you inherited are not the ones you're going to pass on. The limits you've accepted are not permanent, they're flexible, and once you see them as flexible, you can begin to stretch them, push them, and eventually shatter them. This is where thinking beyond limits truly begins, not with some external achievement, but with an internal rebellion. It starts when you refuse to live inside someone else's version of possible. It starts when you stop asking, can I? And start asking, why not me? It starts the moment you stop accepting the illusion and start designing your own reality. Because here's the truth: the only limits that truly exist are the ones you refuse to challenge. And the moment you question them, they lose their power. Once you've begun to question the limits that were handed to you, the next step is to fundamentally change the way you approach possibility itself. Most people live their entire lives asking the wrong question: can I do this? That question seems reasonable on the surface, but it's built on doubt. It gives you permission to quit before you even start. People who achieve extraordinary results don't spend their time wondering if they can. They decide they must. They stop negotiating with their dreams and start aligning everything in their lives around the outcome they are committed to creating. This shift from what's possible to what's required changes everything. When something is a possibility, it's optional. You can pursue it if it's convenient, if conditions are perfect, if you're feeling motivated that day. But when something becomes a requirement, you reorganize your world around it. Think about how you treat your basic needs. You don't wake up wondering if you'll breathe today. You don't debate whether water is possible. You just find a way because your brain understands it's non-negotiable. What if you approached your goals with that same level of certainty? The truth is, the human mind and body are capable of astonishing adaptation, but they respond to necessity, not preference. When you must figure something out, you find a way. When you must overcome an obstacle, you discover strength and creativity you didn't know you had. History is full of people who accomplished what others called impossible simply because they refused to give themselves an exit. They burned the ships, they removed the safety net. They made success a standard, not an option. Here's what happens when you operate from that mindset. Your focus sharpens. You stop chasing distractions. Your energy becomes concentrated on solutions rather than problems. Your brain goes to work not asking, can this be done, but how will I make this happen? That subtle shift is the difference between wishful thinking and unstoppable momentum. But shifting from possibility to requirement isn't just about grit. It's also about identity. If you keep seeing yourself as someone who tries, you'll always leave room for failure. If you decide you are someone who does, who executes, who figures it out no matter what, your actions will start to match that identity. You start living from the future you're building, not the past you're escaping. And this isn't about reckless ambition. It's about aligning your standards with the life you truly want. Most people don't fail because their goals are too big. They fail because their standards are too low. They accept mediocrity in places where excellence is required. They settle for good enough when their soul is craving greatness. When you raise your standards, your actions have no choice but to follow. And when your actions follow, results become inevitable. This is the mindset of people who break barriers in every field. Entrepreneurs who disrupt industries, athletes who redefine records, artists who change culture. They don't wait for permission. They don't wait for the stars to align. They decide what's required and then step into that version of themselves now, before the evidence shows up. And because of that, the evidence eventually does. So if there's a dream inside you, a vision that keeps tugging at your heart, stop treating it like a possibility. Stop asking if you can and start asking what it will take. What kind of discipline will it require? What kind of mindset must you cultivate? What habits must you adopt, and which excuses must you abandon? That's the path forward. That's how impossible goals become inevitable outcomes. Because in the end, greatness doesn't belong to the lucky. It belongs to the committed, and when you make the shift from maybe to must, from possible to required, you stop hoping for change and start commanding it. If breaking the illusion of limitation is the first step, and shifting from possibility to requirement is the second, then the third, and perhaps the most profound, is transforming the way you see yourself. Because here's the truth. You will never outperform your self-image. You cannot build a limitless life with a limited identity. If you see yourself as someone who is small, unworthy, or destined to struggle, your actions will reflect that belief no matter how much you dream. But the moment you shift your identity, your entire reality begins to reorganize itself around that new standard. Every decision you make, every habit you keep, every goal you chase, they all flow from who you believe you are. Most people don't fail because they're not capable. They fail because deep down, they're trying to create extraordinary results while still identifying as ordinary. They're trying to write a new story with the same old narrator. And until you change who you are being, your outcomes will always reflect who you believe you are. Think of identity as the thermostat of your life. If you set a thermostat at 70 degrees and open the windows, the temperature might change briefly, but eventually the system will work to bring it back to 70. The same thing happens with your identity. You might push yourself for a while, take massive action, even see a glimpse of success. But if your internal thermostat is still set at not good enough, or not meant for greatness, you will sabotage yourself back to where you subconsciously believe you belong. That's why willpower alone isn't enough. You must elevate the standard of who you are. And this isn't about arrogance. It's not about convincing yourself you're someone you're not. It's about expanding into the truth of who you can be. Vision and identity are deeply connected. Your vision pulls you forward, but your identity decides whether you step toward it or shrink away. If your vision is to lead, but you see yourself as a follower, you'll hesitate. If your vision is to build, but you see yourself as someone who always quits, you'll stall. But if you begin to embody the identity of the person who already lives that vision, your actions will naturally align with that future. This is why the most successful people in any field speak about their goals as inevitabilities, not possibilities. They don't just say, "I want to build a company." They say, "I am a builder." They don't say, "I hope to inspire." They say, "I am a leader." By speaking and thinking from that identity, they train their brain to close the gap between who they are now and who they are becoming. The most powerful question you can ask yourself is this: who would I need to become for my vision to be inevitable? And once you answer that, start living like that person now, not someday in the future, not once everything's perfect, but right now. Think how they would think. Make decisions as they would. Show up with the discipline, the certainty, the courage that version of you embodies. The more you do, the more your identity catches up, and with it, your external world begins to transform. And remember, identity is not fixed. It's a choice. You're not defined by your past. You're defined by the story you decide to write from this moment forward. You don't have to wait for proof. You become the proof. You don't need permission. You are the permission. And as your identity expands, so does the range of what's possible in your life. Because ultimately, you don't get what you want, you get who you are. And when you elevate who you are, when you decide to embody the version of yourself that is worthy of the future you're building, the impossible stops being a dream and starts becoming your destiny. At this point, you've shattered the illusion of limitation, shifted your mindset from possibility to requirement, and begun to shape an identity that aligns with your vision. But there's one more truth you need to embrace, and it's the one that separates dreamers from achievers. Nothing changes until you act. Thinking beyond limits is not a philosophy you simply believe in. It's a way of living you embody through massive, intelligent action. Without action, even the most powerful vision remains just an idea floating in your head. It's potential energy with no outlet. And potential, no matter how great, changes nothing until it's put to work. Here's where many people get stuck. They wait for the perfect plan, the perfect timing, the perfect confidence. They convince themselves that once they feel ready, then they'll move. But readiness is a myth. It never comes. Action is what creates readiness. Movement is what builds momentum. Every great achievement you admire started not with perfect clarity, but with a decision to begin, even before everything made sense. Action has a transformative quality. It builds belief. It reshapes identity. It teaches lessons that no amount of thinking ever could. You can read books, visualize success, and analyze strategies all day long, but until you take that first uncomfortable step, nothing shifts. Because growth doesn't happen in theory, it happens in motion, and motion doesn't just move you forward, it expands what you believe is possible. Every small win, Every obstacle you overcome stretches your sense of capability. Before long, the limits you once saw as walls start to feel more like speed bumps. But let's be clear, not all action is equal. Massive action doesn't mean random busyness. It means intelligent, purpose-driven action aimed directly at your highest outcomes. It means experimenting, iterating, adapting, not waiting for the one perfect move, but constantly making better moves. It means being relentless about progress, even if that progress is messy and imperfect, because messy action will always outperform perfect inaction. And yes, action comes with risk. You will stumble, you will make mistakes, you will face moments where you question everything. But those moments are not signs you're failing, they're proof you're growing. You cannot build strength without resistance. You cannot develop mastery without mistakes. The discomfort you feel along the way is not a signal to stop. It's a sign you're stepping beyond the boundaries of who you used to be. This is why people who live without limits are obsessed with momentum. They know that once they start, the hardest part is behind them. Momentum builds confidence, and confidence fuels more action. That cycle becomes unstoppable. And it starts with something as simple as doing the next thing you know you need to do. Not the 10th thing, not the thing 6 months down the road, the next thing right now. Success is rarely the result of one massive leap. It's the accumulation of thousands of small, deliberate steps that over time create a breakthrough. And here's the deeper truth. The universe doesn't respond to intention alone. It responds to action. Life meets you at the level of your movement. When you show up fully, not half-heartedly, not when it's convenient, but with total commitment, you start attracting resources, opportunities, and people that were invisible before. Action creates clarity. Action builds character. Action turns the invisible into the inevitable. So if you're serious about thinking beyond limits, stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the perfect plan. Begin now, boldly, imperfectly, relentlessly. Move with conviction. Adjust as you go, and trust that every step you take is pulling you closer to the life you were meant to live.